All right, let's get right into it. For the past few years, AI has felt like this massive, sprawling experiment. But as we look ahead to 2026, something is fundamentally changing. The experimental phase? It's over. We are now officially entering the era of industrial-grade AI. So today we're going to break down exactly what that means and, more importantly, why it matters to you. So here's our game plan. We'll kick things off with AI's new reality, what's happening on the ground right now. Then we'll dig into the two huge forces reshaping everything, the new rules of compliance and the wild economics of open source. We'll see how it all comes together in a high-stakes field like healthcare, get a view from the developers in the trenches, and then wrap with the big question. Are you actually ready for what's coming next? Okay, so let's talk about AI's new reality. For the longest time, it's been about playing around, seeing what's possible. Well, that's done. The pace of change today is just incredible. And it's creating this fundamental tension inside pretty much every organization out there. And this quote from Sullivan Cotter just nails it. Our brains, they tend to think in straight lines. But AI's progress, it's exponential. It doesn't feel like another software update. It feels like a whole new industrial revolution, but this time it's for brain power. And the numbers? They totally back this up. A wild 85% of organizations are already using AI in some capacity. So yeah, this is no longer some niche tech for the early adopters. It is a mainstream business tool, and it's being plugged in everywhere. But here it is. This is the core tension of the whole story. While everyone's rushing to adopt it, a full quarter, 1 in 4 organizations, have no clue what AI services are actually running inside their own walls. This chaotic, uncontrolled growth has created a giant blind spot, and frankly, it's opening the door to some pretty serious risks. Which brings us perfectly to the first major force that's starting to tame this AI Wild West, the compliance mandate. The days of just letting 1,000 flowers bloom and seeing what happens are coming to an end. Why? Because the regulators are here, and the rules of the game are changing, fast. And let's be super clear, AI compliance isn't some friendly suggestion box. It is a mandatory framework to make sure AI is being used legally, ethically, and safely. Big regulations like the EU AI Act are already setting the standard for the entire globe. Now, this is a really interesting distinction. Think of it like this. Compliance is about following the external rules of the road, making sure you're ready when the auditors come knocking. Governance, on the other hand, is your internal strategy. It's how you decide where you're even trying to go and how you manage the risks to get there safely. And it all pretty much boils down to these 4 pillars. You can think of this as the regulator's checklist. They're going to want to know, how do you protect user data? Can you explain how your model made a decision? How do you make sure it's fair? And ultimately, who's accountable when something inevitably goes wrong? Okay, now let's pivot to the second major force, which is every bit as powerful as compliance. And that's the absolutely disruptive economics of open source AI. This is changing the entire cost equation for building truly powerful systems. I mean, just look at this number. This single statistic is a total bombshell for enterprise AI budgets, an 86% cost reduction. That's not just a little bit better, it makes powerful custom-built AI accessible on a scale we've just never seen before. So first, let's just peek at the proprietary world. If you want to use a top-of-the-line model like Claude 3 Opus for just a single high-volume app, you could be looking at over $90,000 a month. Even the more budget-friendly options are still going to run you tens of thousands of dollars. Now look at the alternative when you host an open-source model yourself. For every $10 you'd spend on GPT-4o, a model like Llama 3.3 costs you, wait for it, 17 cents to do the exact same amount of work. That's not just cheaper, it's a completely different economic reality. But here's the real kicker. It's not just about being cheap. It's about the value you get for your money. When you look at the quality to cost ratio, it is a whole different ballgame. The best open source models deliver a value ratio that's over 40 times higher than their big name rivals. You're getting absolutely incredible performance for a tiny fraction of the price. So, okay, we've got these two massive forces, right? Compliance and economics. Now let's go see how they're actually playing out in one of the most complex, high-stakes industries there is, healthcare. This is the real proving ground. And this isn't some far-off science fiction. The forecast is that in just a few years, AI won't just be a tool for looking at data, it will literally be the operational execution layer for most of the routine work, both on the admin side and the clinical side. And you can see this clear 3-step evolution happening. It all starts with automating the tedious stuff, like having AI listen in and automatically write up notes from a patient visit. That helps with burnout. From there, it expands to helping with diagnosis and treatment plans. And finally, it demands a whole new skill from doctors and nurses, being able to govern and oversee these AI systems safely. And this really gets to the heart of it. This isn't about replacing doctors. No way. It's about building tools that can handle the routine tasks and surface key insights way faster, which frees up clinicians to focus on the stuff that really matters: their complex judgment, their empathy, and their direct patient care. Okay, now let's zoom in even further. We've heard the high-level strategy from the boardroom. Now let's go down to the command line and see what the practitioners, the people actually building this stuff, are really doing. Because, it's one thing to read a fancy report, but what does this whole revolution actually look like for the developers and the data scientists who are on the ground, coding this stuff every day? And if you look in places like Reddit's local LLM community, you find this really candid, unfiltered feedback. And what you see are developers just raving about specific, powerful open-source medical models. They're saying things like this one, MedGemma, is absolutely fantastic for the work they're doing. And what's so fascinating is how they're using them. They aren't just asking it generic questions. They are writing these incredibly specific instructions, these system prompts, to mold a general model for unbelievably high-stakes situations, like advising a medic on the front lines or a triage doctor on a battlefield. That's precision. All right, let's pull the camera all the way back out and put these pieces together. What does this massive shift from experimentation to execution actually mean for you and your organization? It really boils down to three key things. 1. Compliance isn't a nice-to-have anymore. It is a mandatory core business function. 2. The economics of open source aren't just a cost saver. They're a massive strategic advantage if you can use them right. And 3. AI isn't just predicting things anymore. It is becoming the execution engine right in the heart of our most critical industries. So we'll leave you with this question to think about. As AI becomes the engine that runs more and more of your daily operations, you have to ask yourself, is that engine running on your terms, guided by your strategy, or is it running on someone else's? Because come 2026, the answer to that question is going to define the winners and the losers.